welcome to the Gazette Mail. Welcome to the candidate meeting with the Gazette Mail reporter and editors. Appreciate y'all being here. We are meeting today with two of the six, I believe, Republican candidates for the House of Delegates 36th District. So what we'll do is live stream everything that says on the record. This is just pretty much a conversation. With you. We will introduce ourselves and then ask you each to introduce yourself and give a 1 or 2 minute introduction of why you're running. And then we'll just begin the conversation. We'll ask some questions and we'll just have this discussion. So we'll start on this side. Phil, if you would introduce yourself.
Phil Cadler, State House reporter.
I'm Brad McElhenney. I'm co-editor of the Gazette Mail, and one of my jobs is working with the Daily Mail opinion page. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
I'm Kelly Merritt, opinion page editor for the Daily Mail opinion page.
I'm Greg Moore, the city editor at the Gazette Mail.
I'm Rob Byers, co-editor of the Gazette Mail.
I'm Joanne Miller, the Gazette opinion page editor.
Sure. My name is Brian Ulery, and I'm a native West Virginian, born in Elkins, West Virginia, back in 1971. My parents got divorced, and I moved away to Uniontown, Pennsylvania, which was just over the border from Morgantown. After graduating from college, I tried to find a job in both Pennsylvania and West Virginia to be close to my family. But because of the lack of jobs for people in my career field at the time, I, like many other people of my age and now continuing, had to move out of state. So I've had jobs in Florida, Georgia, and a little bit of a stint in Pennsylvania before going back to and now I was fortunate enough in the last 2.5 years to be able to return to my home state where I want to be. Since being back, I've taken the lessons of those other states and realized how difficult it is to be in a hospital administration. So, that's one of the reasons why I've been running, and that's why I want to bring those lessons from the other states and the other places I've been back to West Virginia.
Very good. Bye.
Hi, my name is Tressie Walker-Gaskins. I'm a local attorney here in Charleston. I have my own law firm. I don't work for anybody else. I primarily focus on family law, primarily child custody. So it works really great with being a mom. I kind of pick and choose my hours, and I get to pick who I get to work with. It's great. I love it. I love my job. I'm originally from Hawaii. I came here by way of meeting my husband in law school in Michigan. We had several options after we graduated, and he said, "Come back to West Virginia. Let's go there. Let's try it. I have to go back to my home state." And he convinced me, and here I am. We've been here for 4 years. We just bought our first house. We have a blossoming law firm, 2 beautiful daughters, 2 little doggies, and I mean, this state has been so good to me, so good to me. This last couple of years in West Virginia has been interesting to watch. We've seen the Republicans take over the House and the Senate, and I thought that after all the years of Democratic rule, it was time for some change, time for some new ideas, and that's really when I decided to run. I wanted to build on the majority in the House, bring new ideas, fresh perspective. I'm focusing primarily on seniors, jobs, and infrastructure, and that's why I'm running. I'm here to give as much as I can give so that I have 0 regrets moving forward, and that's what this campaign is about, just bringing new ideas and fresh perspectives and innovation to the State House. So, thank you.
You touched on my first question, which is you're running Republican. Republicans are now the majority in the State House for now 2 sessions. And how are we doing? How are the Republicans doing? And what would you like to see further accomplished?
Do you want me to start?
Sure.
Okay. That's a great question. The Republicans had some very difficult choices to make with regard to right to work legislation, and the prevailing wage. And that was a very, very difficult change for West Virginians. But I think if you look at the ultimate goal of the party, it's to make us more competitive. It is to bring more jobs to the people here. And that is absolutely of paramount importance compared to anything else the state is facing. So my goal, if I get elected, would be to primarily focus on jobs. Now, I don't think that the government can just bring jobs to people. Come on, that's not going to happen. But the government's role is to set policy to facilitate an environment in which a business owner can bring their business here and flourish and grow and be nurtured. And that's why we need to have policymakers that recognize that and are going to, come back to the table and look again and again and again. What can we do to, facilitate certain industries to come here? So that's my goal, and that's, what I look forward to accomplishing if I get elected, and helping the party continue that path to create an environment that's very job friendly.
I would agree. I mean, I think after 83 years of single party rule, there were a lot of pent up issues that a new party coming in needed to deal with. My goal is very similar. I mean, I being a leader of a big employer in this community, I want to make sure that the environment that the legislature creates is focused on building businesses, building opportunities for more employment. And so through taxation reforms, through regulation reforms, I'm hoping that the legislature will continue to look for ways to improve the business environment here. So do I think that they've been successful in everything over the last 2 years, to your question? I mean, of course not. Nobody can do everything at once. But do I think that they've made a lot of very hard choices very quickly in order to move the state in a different direction? Yes, I do. And I think more needs to be done.
For instance?
Well, let's take what really led me to be a candidate today. I mean, I've set up hundreds of physician practices over the last 12 years. I mean, that's what I've done with my entire career. And I've done that in 4 different states. I came here and started building physician practices and put 2 primary care physicians in our community. I didn't know I had to ask permission, and I forgot to ask permission for the healthcare authority. So I got fined $7,500 for each of them. That's not something that I think is good for any of us. I mean, we should be encouraging primary care physician practices and all physician practices to be here. And we shouldn't be putting legislative and regulatory barriers in our way. And so, again, 4 different states. This is the very first time it's happened. I mean, that's something that I think we need to make sure doesn't continue.
See, just to clarify, you were fined because
The
you helped
healthcare-
physicians set up.
Well, we employed two physicians within Thomas Health System, and because we didn't inform them inform the healthcare authority prior to doing so, we had a new lawyer come on, and she said, "Well, you didn't file the right paperwork." So she contacted the healthcare authority, and they said, "Well, because you've told us, the fine's $7,500 per office."
That, West Virginia.
Yeah, that was an odd welcome and something I had never experienced in my entire career. So that led me to say, I've got to do something about that. I mean, that makes no sense. And then I started talking to other business owners who had similar stories that dealt with their industry, but it's those things that I want to make sure that we are looking at, seeing if the regulation, the rules, the law actually makes sense, and if it doesn't, trying to remove those barriers.
So none of the 3 other states you set up had any kind of rate-setting agency or anything?
No, this is the very first rate-setting agency I've ever participated in.
Okay, what were the other states?
Florida, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. I mean, there were limited certificate of need laws in those states. But the rate setting authority that the state of West Virginia had, I had never experienced. So,
And that's what the legislature got rid of.
correct, which I think was fantastic. But the fining, the portion of the fine that I told is still on the books right now because that's through the Certificate of Need regulations.
Anything specifically, Ms. Gaskins? Just add and then we'll take more questions.
No, I don't have anything specific to add. Thank you.
Can I follow up too? So on that healthcare authority thing, was the fine specifically for locating primary care doctors here, or was it for some other detail?
No, it was a detail that if the hospital expands and opens other satellite offices, it needs to ask permission first. If it's so far away from the main campus of the hospital.
I would have thought the hospital would have wanted that.
Well, I worked for the hospital. I was, but they didn't. I mean, it just was. They hadn't done a lot of expansion into the community prior to me arriving. I mean, we've hired about 30 physicians now since I've been here. Expanded into clinics in 2 Fruth pharmacies. We have clinics in Nitro and Winfield that we're very excited about. So we've done a lot of expansion over the last 2.5 years. So they hadn't done that prior, and so they weren't really familiar with that aspect of the role. So it was quite a unique case and something that, quite honestly, infuriated me. So, you're welcome.
Oh, okay. Well, my turn. So I always like to ask everybody with the budget discussion going on how you would like to see the budget hold closed. Whoever would like to go first.
Sure. Well, there's a couple things there. I mean, before coming here, one of the businesses I was in was a $1.2 billion corporation, and I was a vice president leading that organization. And we've had our ups and downs with the budget. But instead of doing base budgeting where you just assume that everything that's in the budget needs to continue to be in the budget, whenever we would run into crises, we would say we want to do zero-based budgeting where every single program has to justify its ongoing existence. So our state population is dwindling. I think that there is probably a need to look at whether or not the size of our state government makes sense. I think that we have to really be in tune with every program that we have to make sure that there's not duplication amongst the agencies. And if there is duplication, to solve a specific issue, which of those programs are the best? And fund that and let the other one go. And I think the only way that you do that is to really focus on the detail of the budget and ensure that every program justifies its existence and it doesn't just continue on the books because of spending.
Well, I'll tell you, I think that it's the wrong approach to just go in and cut. This state is in a job crisis, and the last thing that I want to see happen is government workers out of jobs and then, just adding to struggling families. So I don't think that simply cutting government is the number one answer. I think leadership is on par with, their three-prong approach, which is, one, you're going to have to get a revenue stream, and they're looking at the cigarette tax. I would support the cigarette tax. I think that as a matter of public policy, we should encourage people to stop smoking anyway. But I think that you're going to have to look at a new revenue stream. The second approach is, again, cut the fat out of government. I think that there is something to that, but not until you do a comprehensive audit of all of the agencies to make sure that you're giving proper notice and you have a very solid foundation for why you would want to cut any agencies, that sort of thing. And then finally, I think that they need to dip into the rainy day fund. I mean, not take everything out of it. I mean, savings are critical. So I think that leadership is on the right idea to do the three-prong approach, and I support that approach.
Mr. Ulery, as a healthcare professional, how do you feel about raising the cigarette tax?
I'm for that too. I mean, I do believe that that's a public health matter. I mean, there are studies that show that that by raising those taxes, the number of smokers actually does decrease. Our cigarette tax is one of the lowest amongst our cohorts locally, or in the surrounding states, and I do think that justifies us raising that tax.
So, are your thoughts on that motivated primarily for health reasons, or
I think it's
budgetary
both. I mean, I think it's both. I think that it does help the public health, and it also does help to close a gap. To go back to something that you said, I agree. I don't want to have just uniform across the board cuts. I mean, that's something, and I think that laying off anybody on the state level is a problem. I do think that there are priorities that we have to set too. I mean, as a state, we made commitments to people who are in PEIA and in those retirement programs. And I think that people who are actively in those retirement programs, they need to have the retirement that was promised to them. What we've also done is we've promised a new group of people through Medicaid expansion additional benefits, and now the budget is in crisis, and I do think that the rainy day fund should be tapped to some extent. But we need to look at how those benefits are structured for the new Medicaid patients and the Affordable Care Act, the new enrollees that came from the Affordable Care Act. One of the things that's happened in our hospital and throughout the state is that those new enrollees have come into the emergency room as their primary source of seeking care. And I want them to seek care, but I want them to we need to educate them that the emergency room is not the appropriate place. And currently, it's the only cost that it has for them is $8 to visit the emergency room if it's a non-emergent case. As a Medicaid patient. That is not an adequate deterrent to not come into the single highest cost of our healthcare system. And so in places like Kanawha County and Putnam and Cabell, where there are great primary care clinics, I mean, there are clinics, there are FQHCs, there are other federally qualified health centers that also provide primary care service to people on a sliding scale basis based on your income. We need to encourage people to seek care there instead of our emergency rooms. And again, I think that if we were to look at some of those things, the way that this expansion is covered, that has the potential to reduce the new Medicaid expenses that we have. I mean, if you look at the governor's budget, I mean, the increases to DHHR are $10, $20, $30 million for the next 3 or 4 years. And I just don't think that that's a sustainable rate of growth.
What's interesting about the ER payment, is that something West Virginia has the ability, the leeway to change, or is that one of those federal requirements?
I believe that there is some leeway, especially if we went back. I mean, the government is very willing to make pilot projects for things, and I think even if it is a state rule, if we can go to them and say, let us charge more because we can provide additional resources for them. I mean, both of our hospitals in our system have urgent care clinics. We have capacity now with the primary care physicians that we've employed. The FQHCs have hired new people. Lincoln Primary Care continues to advertise for new patients. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of great things that have happened to provide service to people in this state. Mm-hmm. But we have not adequately encouraged people to go. My mom, my family, and I were on Medicaid for the vast majority of my youth. And she was on Medicaid, until I went away to school. My mom was of the opinion that the place to get care was the hospital. And as a matter of fact, when she died last year, the people who diagnosed her with her cancer was the emergency room doctor. Because even though I was in healthcare and I kept encouraging her to go, that's what she had done for the other 50, 60 years of her life. And so there was no real financial incentive, even in her employer benefits or Medicaid, to force her to go anywhere outside of the emergency room, so she continued to go. And so there were interesting discussions with me at the family dinner table. But to know that she had to be diagnosed with cancer in the emergency room and not because she had ongoing care is tough. And I want to see if there's things that I can do to help people develop relationships with their doctors instead of just seeing whoever happens to be on call at the hospital.
Just for the folks who might be watching this, can you identify the two hospitals in our system?
Sure. St. Francis Hospital and Thomas Memorial Hospital.
I feel like we should have some follow-up somewhere.
Actually, I don't want to follow up, but I'm just just ask another question. We, both of you have good outside perspective, outside of West Virginia perspective. You spend a lot of time out of the state, and it's something we talked about in one of the other candidates meeting is, we always talk about, or we hear the state development office, everybody talking, bring jobs into the state, bring jobs into the state, but what we don't see a lot of focus on is helping entrepreneurs within the state, helping state citizens create their own jobs. And we talk about whether a culture of, there's not a culture of job creation here. Everybody waits for a job to come instead of creating their own job. I don't know if it's a legislative role or what can we do in the state to help create that culture of that's about entrepreneurs.
I think. Do you mind if I go
No,
first?
please.
Okay. I think that using the word culture is really significant in this context. When we talk about our cultural foundations, we're talking about home, right? What our parents teach us, what we're learning in our schools. So I think the first response I would have to your question is, it really starts at home. We need to have families that are going to encourage their kids or their husbands and wives to start their own businesses, because the vast majority of jobs in West Virginia are created by small businesses. So that environment needs to be fostered, cultivated, nurtured. A business is like a little baby, right? It's constantly growing, but it has challenges. You really have to cater to them because those are what creates the jobs. And secondly, on top of family encouragement, we also need our schools to foster a culture of entrepreneurship and innovation. How do we do that? We have to restore creativity back to our schools and let our teachers teach and do their jobs. If you look at No Child Left Behind, that was enacted in 2002. I graduated high school in 2001. Colossal failure. It was complete federal overreach into our homes, trying to teach our children what the government thought was important. Well, I don't know about you, but I know that I have a fundamental right to rear my child this way I see fit, and I don't want the government raising my child. I don't want the government teaching my child. I want to be more involved in selecting the curriculum. So, the culture is at home and also in our schools, bringing it back to a local level. But also fostering development by the state. The state can offer low interest loans to startups. They could even offer 0% interest loans just because somebody's willing to put themselves out there and take a chance. And I think that type of behavior of our people needs to be rewarded and not penalized. And we've talked a little bit about tax reform, but that absolutely is an incentive for people to bring their innovation and their ideas here. Let's be competitive. Let's give them extremely low tax brackets. Let's look and see which industries are booming right now. But even more importantly, let's have the foresight to look ahead 10 years to see what's going to be big, right? Instead of looking back, just some examples I thought of at the top of my head: financial institutions. I think healthcare workers are huge, and Mr. Ulery will probably be able to talk about that. Nurses, nursing assistants, people who want to do home health care to help our elderly population. That's really important. So not just across the board corporate tax breaks, but certain industries that are very, very critical to our state and are going to have a huge impact going forward. I think that's really significant. So I think that when we talk about culture of entrepreneurship and bringing innovation to the state, I think it starts at home. I think the schools play a huge role in it, and I think that the government has little things like tax reform and low interest loans that can propel that culture forward. So that's my thoughts on that.
I mean, I certainly do think that we have to look at ways to change the culture to create entrepreneurs here. I'm a member of the Workforce Development Board, and right before coming here, I was at their quarterly meeting, and we were talking about a new initiative that the governor had that did not pass during the last legislative session regarding providing incentives for entrepreneurs. But to go back to my earlier answer, I mean, there are programs that already exist through the Small Business Association and all these things. My issue is that we don't communicate that often enough. That those resources aren't out in our community colleges and our universities enough to talk to our students and our potential entrepreneurs about all those programs that currently exist. So while I appreciate the fact that new programs are being proposed, I also want to make sure that we understand all of the programs that currently exist, because there is a deficit in entrepreneurship here that needs to be closed. This is a great state with a lot of great opportunities. Mm-hmm. I mean, the amount of money that's been spent to improve our infrastructure on both roads and IT communication, I think really do prepare us well for the future. We still have some roads that need to be built, and we still have big swaths of our state that don't have all of the IT infrastructure that it needs. But the backbone is there to create something great in the future. But we have to make sure that people are here, that have great ideas, know how they can get those things funded, and know all the programs that currently exist.
So a great word of that's a big topic too is infrastructure. And their backbone is there, yet some people argue that the roads are crumbling, and there, as you said, there's not so high-speed internet. However, that'll be the next question. But how do we improve the infrastructure?
Well, I mean, I think we're going to have to continue to. I mean, we are still going to be a net importer of federal tax dollars into our state to improve roads, and we're going to have to continue to lobby for as much of that as we possibly can. The fact that it takes 6 or 7 hours to get from here to Washington D.C. because some of the connectors aren't there, I mean, that needs to change. So we're going to have to do a better job of lobbying. We're going to have to find ways to make those improvements. We are also doing things locally, though, that help to improve our IT infrastructure. There's a new provider of high-speed internet that is cabling an area between downtown Charleston and South Charleston, and that will be live, I think, sometime in the next year. But that is a private-public partnership that I think provides that IT infrastructure for about half the cost of what we're currently paying right now. So improving access to that, looking for partnerships and ways to lower the costs for people to use it, I think is a great way for this state to start.
I disagree with Mr. Ulery as it relates to trying to go and get more federal dollars. Again, I think that this is very closely related to the job issue, and I think that we can look inward to solve these problems of infrastructure. The more jobs that we create, the more money is going to be in the state of West Virginia in terms of taxes. I mean, that's just a fact. By way of property tax, the fuel tax on gasoline, personal income taxes, that's what's going to boost the revenue. So I don't think that the answer is going after the federal government at all. I think that if we really focus on jobs in the economy and we set place very good policy, solid policy, look to other states, see what they've done, I think that's going to be the real viable solution.
I think that there are holes in our infrastructure now that we're going to have, that if we can fill them will help to bring more jobs. I mean, a sustainable future for us is to make sure that we have more jobs. But federal government needs to invest in West Virginia. I mean, some of the policies of the federal government have significantly damaged our workforce, has significantly damaged our economy by reducing the coal output from our state. And I think by asking them to help us to improve our infrastructure so that we can become a more attractive state and to be able to provide easier access to the rest of the country through our roads and highway systems, that is a reasonable request.
I would agree with you. I mean, I guess I'll write a letter to Hillary. I don't know. I'll write Hillary a letter and ask her for money, but those programs have already come forward. The feds have said, we're going to give you X amount of dollars, and forgive me, I don't know the figure off the top of my head, X amount of dollars to facilitate some sort of workplace program for out-of-work minors. That number doesn't even come close.
No, it doesn't.
And thinking that they're going to bail us out somehow, I just don't.
Well, I'm not
I don't
looking
think it's
for
a
complete
plausible. And I don't mean to debate.
Right.
I apologize.
That's all right.
I am a lawyer, but I don't think it's a plausible solution. I think that the solution is inward again. So.
Right. Well, I do think that we're only going to help ourselves. I mean, you only get help if you help yourself. So I do think that there are a lot of things that we can do ourselves. But I think we need to not be so proud as to think that we shouldn't go ask. And that's the point I'm trying to make.
We talked a little bit with Democrats for this race yesterday about charter schools. They were not incredibly interested in the concept. I mean, they're interested in the topic, just not embracing. Is there any difference of opinion here?
Sure.
Okay.
My wife is a current public school, elementary school teacher here at Chandler Academy. She was a public school teacher when I met her and for years. But as we've moved around, she's also worked in charter schools. And the experiences that she has had with those children in those charter environments, I think, were exceptional. And while there is a discussion about having the revenue taken out of the public education and funding those charter schools, from my personal experience and listening to my wife, who has been teaching for a long time, she had a belief that it actually elevated the entire educational system in the community, because there was competition where there wasn't before. And so there were new programs being put in place in the counties that we were in where those charter schools occurred that didn't happen. One of the things that I like, and something that was mentioned in your newspaper a couple days ago, was the look at STEAM, science, technology, education, engineering, arts, and engineering. Yeah, that's right. Engineering, arts, and mathematics. And actually all of the charter schools that she had an arts education component. And once they put it in, the county returned some of their arts programs too. I don't think that what kind of world do we have if we also don't create artists and poets and painters and things like that? I mean, what kind of a boring world would that be? So, that influence of competition in this community, in our communities, where we were previously, I think was great. So yes, there was an uproar about taking money out of the public school, but all of those charter schools that she participated in were public charter schools, so anyone in the community could go there. And again, our personal experience has been very good, and I think the students in those communities their educational experience were enhanced because of it.
I think it's really interesting to hear positive feedback from somebody who has personal experience with charter school. I'm a millennial, so we love choice, we love selection. I think do it. I mean, what we've been doing for the last 80 years in public education isn't working. So why wouldn't the state give families more options? Let them choose how they want to educate their children. I think that they should give charter schools a go. Let's see if it works. Let's instill more creativity and not so much testing in schools. So I support charter schools. I might even venture out to say I even support a voucher program. Whatever is going to give people of this state more options as far as educating their children and they get to choose, I support it. If we came back a few years later and for some reason that policy wasn't working, well then I guess you could scrap it. But how would you ever know unless you try it? How will you know your business isn't going to work unless you try it? I'm a very optimistic person. So I support the charter school initiatives.
Legislative candidates, especially in these meetings, often touch on a lot of important high-level issues, education, jobs, things like that. And then when they make it down to the State House, they tend to get bogged down in a lot of other issues down there. So, for instance, in the last session, the legislature removed all licensing and training requirements to carry concealed weapons. That's going to kick in late May. Was that the right choice?
I think the Second Amendment exists.
Yep.
I think the second, and I think that it's difficult to license what is your right. I mean, I understand that there's a lot of room for debate on that, but from my perspective, the Second Amendment exists, and it should be unabridged.
So you would have voted for the bill?
I would have, yes.
Should the people be able to carry the guns into the legislature?
I struggle with that. I mean, because throughout this process, I mean, I've gotten, hundreds of applications for, my statements on these things. And it all asks for my NRA number. I don't have one. And I don't personally own a gun. But I believe in the Second Amendment. Now, that being said, they asked, some of the questions were, would I agree to allow it on the state capitol grounds or in universities or in my place of business? And I've answered those no. But I also answered that if they brought them in their vehicles and left them in their vehicles, would that be okay? And I said yes. So, I mean, I do think that there are places for weapons, and in people's workplaces and people's schools, that's not the place. But if somebody wants to bring it because they want to have that protection from the time they leave in the morning until, on their way to work, and from their way to work back home, I believe they should have it.
We have the Second Amendment, and there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's there, it exists, and it's our constitutional right. I think it's a difficult question in terms of allowing guns on schools, but you're always faced with the issue of somebody who, isn't licensed or whatever the case, coming to a school with a gun. So do we want someone there with a gun to protect whoever is there? I mean, yeah, absolutely. People are unpredictable. I can tell you from experience, I mean, I've been attacked and assaulted by men when I lived in Washington, D.C., not just once, twice. And I wish that I would have had something to protect myself because I was victimized. My husband has a gun in our house, and we're very, very strict with the rules, and, we educate our children about, you never touch it. They're very young, too. Our children are very little. We always keep it out of their reach and their sight. But, it's a personal liberty, and people need to be responsible with it. And, I support the open carry because I think that the vast majority of people in my district support it.
I agree.
So, if the people want it and the people support it, then that's what we're here for. We represent them. So.
Actually, public polling showed that West Virginians didn't support taking the licensing and training training away from concealed carry.
I haven't seen that poll.
And I mean, again, the people that I've talked to in my district about this very issue are pretty adamant that it was fine and something that they would want us to support. Again, that's not a scientific poll, but I don't believe the poll was specific to the 36th district either.
No.
Right.
We had at least one Republican 2 days ago who, I think he brought it up, said, all right, well, one thing we might need to do to get the economy going is consider legalizing marijuana. I was surprised to hear it from that crowd.
Right.
And then there were different degrees of support among the other candidates.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Got an opinion about that?
Actually, Brad, just in these responses, I noticed there were at least two.
Yeah, two of the
candidates
people
were
were
not
not
here.
here.
Yeah.
At least two.
You know, you mind if I
No,
start? I don't
please.
mean to jump the gun here. Okay, I think that there are absolute scientific studies that have come out to support that marijuana has medicinal qualities. I would absolutely support medicinal marijuana. I have sincere reservations, and a lot of the people that I've spoken with have sincere reservations about just legalizing marijuana. And the reason why is because this state has a huge problem with addiction. I mean, people who are very close to me and my family members, are addicted to heroin. I mean, this isn't like something that, you know, oh, that only happens to those people or such and such people, or no, this affects everybody. I never in my life would think that I would be involved with someone who is a heroin addict, and I am. We are. It's a huge problem. What kind of message are we sending when we just legalize marijuana? That's my reservations, is that it could be, you know, it probably is a gateway drug. And what will it lead to? So I have reservations, and that's why.
And for me, on a public health perspective, again, it defies logic that we can prescribe almost any opioid that we want, but that the studies that you cited, and I have read others, show that it is something that is helpful for people in many disease states. So if that's the case, why shouldn't we have the ability to have access to that? So I would support a medical marijuana legalization bill too.
There was, outside marijuana, but hemp, and that bill passed. Excuse me.
It failed.
And to me, that goes back to a state that seems to want to overregulate whatever business do.
Correct. I mean, I do think that there is something to be said about hemp. I mean, before we were a coal country or state, we were an agricultural state. And, you know, if there is a way for us to put that into place to help our economy grow and diversify our economy, I mean, we need to look at that too. But the usage but hemp can be used for a lot of other things. I mean, it's not just so if that's something that could be resurrected, I mean, I would certainly look at it. But as far as carrying marijuana, using marijuana recreationally, no. But from an agricultural and agro-business perspective, I think it's something we have to consider.
Yeah, I tend to agree. You know, I don't want to pretend like I know more than the people in my district. I would support putting this question directly to the people. I would support a referendum to provision to the Constitution. Let the people make these decisions. Put it out there for a general vote. Let them make the decision. I don't know more than they do. I don't know what every single person in my district wants, so let them voice their concerns. Let them voice whether or not they want it. So that's another solution to that issue, is put it to the people.
Outside of the healthcare, do you know of any other regulatory burdens that you would change?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm used to for just running a business is if I have a workers' comp injury, I have been allowed in all the other states to just have as a part of our policy a drug screening. Well, when I came here, I looked at our policy, and because of state laws, I'm not allowed to drug test anybody that has an accident at the hospital. according to West Virginia state law, I have to designate people as high-risk employees. So clearly, there are people at the hospital that are high-risk employees. But I mean, we've had to go down through the list and say RNs are, nuclear medicine techs aren't, or are, but dietitians are not. I mean, all of these people have access to our patients, to things, and instead of just trying to determine if the accident was based on some type of unfortunate outside influence, we are limited by state law in implementing a program similar to what I've had in other states. So that's another issue that I've run into here as a business executive.
Different regulations that you know where you feel are too strong, or industries that could be freed up without less regulation?
Off the top of my head, no. But if you gave me the opportunity to research, I'm sure that I could find something. I've been reading a lot of studies that say West Virginia industry is grossly overregulated. But again, I would have to go back and kind of reread exactly what those studies were referring to.
Since you, I think you both alluded to being fairly recent transplants or returnees to the state, is there any policy or procedure or law in other states you've lived in that you would like to see enacted here, something that sticks out in your mind that, wow, we used to have this in whatever state and it'd be nice if it were here?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, sadly, a lot of my experiences is what's here that that I have never experienced before. I can't think of anything specifically that I'd like to add additional legislation to. So, unfortunately, no.
Yeah, that would require some thought, I think. Just off the top of my head, I can't think of anything directly. Like, could you maybe narrow it down a little bit by sector, or like maybe give me more of a specific question?
I was thinking of certain policy or regulation that existed in another state that just said, gee, if it were here, that would make things a lot easier.
Like,
That's fine.
yeah. It's just a very broad question. I apologize.
No.
Oh, would either of you like to see the religious freedom bill run again?
I'm in a business that doesn't discriminate against anyone. So my answer is no.
No. And the reason why I don't want to see that run is because people in my district need jobs. And if there is policy or laws that's a job killer, I'm not going to support it. So, no.
Okay, well, I think wraps up our questions for you.
Great.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate y'all coming.
Glad to do it.